Thank you so much. All right, so let's get right into the panel session. Um, Again, this is we want to see from the real life experiences from our panelists on this thing of branding and what exactly is branding. So now, by way of starting, right off the top of this whole thing, one of the major things as a small business owner myself, I know that funding is a big deal for every business, right? Every time, if you have a brilliant idea, like I was saying earlier, the first thing you want to look for is funding. Somebody comes up with this amazing, world changing, life transforming solution. The very first place they want to start with is funding. It's always the funding thing, whether you want to bake cakes, whether you want to make shoes, whether it is, whatever business you want to start a farm, funding is always the very first place every business owner wants to start from. And so I want to put it to our panelists this morning. From your experience and based on all that you have gone through, when searching for or when coming up with funding or capital for your business, you want to maybe have a machinery, start a manufacturing plant. When trying to come up with that funding or capital, is branding a significant part of all that you put on the table to say you want to get funding for, and amongst your startup assets or what you need to start up, do you feel or do you think, in your experience and in your opinion, that branding is something to actually consider? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Ipaye first of all. Mr. Sampson, who's here. In this thing of funding and capital, what do you think, where do you think branding stands in terms of seeking for these things? Mr. Sampson, would you like to um, just attempt that question? Would you want to hit it for us a little bit?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right. So it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah. So, in looking for funds, branding is important, very important, because the fact that you have a great idea does not mean you will get the funds. If the person that is to fund or that you are hoping to fund does not understand the trouble or the problem you are trying to solve. Now, for me, and like you also said, branding is basically how people perceive you. So you might have a good solution. If my perception of what you are bringing is not valuable, then I would not be willing to invest. So branding is important. You need to know, how do I sell myself? How do I show the value of what I want to do? How do I make an investor feel like, not investing in this, I am missing out? So yeah, branding is important because it helps you tell your story in a way that you get the funds that you want. You get the funds that you want. So yeah, branding is super important. It's not about the logos and all of that, but how do you tell the story? The solution is one thing. How you tell the story is the main thing. Yeah.
Tekpai, do you want to say something to that space?
Okay, so Ty, thanks for the opportunity to
Thank you, sir.
speak at this brand summit. I think the first thing that I would want us to look at is to define branding. And from the definition, we can then start to delve into if branding has an impact on when you're trying to source funding. So I have a few definitions here, so I'll just go through it quickly. So the first one is the marketing practice of creating a name, symbol, or design that identifies and differentiates a product from other products. An effective branding strategy gives you a major edge in increasing competitive markets. The other one is branding the process, which involves creating a specific name, logo, and an image of a particular product or service that is done to attract customers. And it's usually done through advertising with a consistent theme. So if you're a startup and you're trying to approach a potential investor, one of the things that you obviously want to put together is a brand as well as your business plan. Most times when you are positioning a brand, it is also in line with who your target market is. So for example, if you are selling a luxury item and you decide to put your location in Ajangbadi, when your target market is in Ikoyi, then perhaps the investor might be asking questions in terms of, do you really understand your business in terms of your brand positioning? Would where you're positioning your business be able to give you the kind of revenue that you are looking at? And therefore, if I put my money in this business, is it going to succeed? So I think you don't have to overly complicate it. It's just, how do you position yourself in such a way that, one, you are able to appeal to the right customer, the right target customer, and then if you're in a crowded environment where you have a lot of competition, right? How do you position yourself such that you're able to stand out? And these are things that investors also look for when they're investing in businesses. So I think it's extremely important to consider branding, not to overflog it, but think of it as a part of your marketing strategy to have a brand that stands out and will help you, project an image of someone that knows what they are doing, as well as being able to speak to the right customer.
Thank you so much, sir. I know I really want to hear what Mr. Shoma has to say, because he works right in that space. He works as a brand design lead. But interestingly, Mr. Rufai, you deal with art already, and the typical layman's idea is that branding, design, all of that is like art, and so your business is art already. Shouldn't it tell its own story as a web? And in your own industry, do you think that branding, is a big deal when you're looking for funding capital to start your kind of business? You're muted, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. I remember my friend. I'm sure you will remember me again. The Farm Lab guy. There was a day he came to GE guy. Do you remember, boss?
Yes, I remember. Yeah, I remember the face. I said it was looking familiar.
Wow.
And the way this man spoke. See, to be honest with you, I've been seeing eloquent guys in my life. People that will come and say one thing, and will believe them. But the way he spoke to me that day, for the first time, I wanted to join agriculture that day because of the way he positioned himself. We started my Colo 20. It's fine. You're welcome. We started my Colo 2017, and I started with 2005.
Wow.
And I can tell you that the reason why we are still on top of our game is because of the branding. Sometimes when I think we can use Coca-Cola as an example. Do you know that if you remove the logo of Coca-Cola on that Coca-Cola bottle, it becomes nothing? That is how your branding is very, very important in business. If you cannot brand, you cannot make money. Some products will go without branding, they will go on well. But for young entrepreneurs that are competitive, to be honest with you, I spend nothing less than 30% of my fund on branding for my Colo. Our paid advert every week is almost as high as 50,000 naira. So we're not just using that for marketing. We just want our face to be everywhere. And that's the reason why when my staff ask me, sir, our marketing budget, our advertising budget, I said, because we want to be on everybody's face. Once you're on everybody's face, they will not be like, okay, why is this brand on my face? I can tell you the reason why Buhari won 2015 is because Buhari was on everybody's face. Because if you go to the toilet, you see Buhari. If you go to the market, you see Buhari. If you go everywhere, you see Buhari. I think the red media did a very good job branding Buhari for us. Even though we don't know that we are going to actually have one or two issues later in the future. So I think branding is very important. And with my Colo, for an example, we take branding very, very serious. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we move on, I really, again, like eager to hear what Mr. Oshoma has to say, because just on a side note, so we've heard from entrepreneurs, right? We know entrepreneurs are the money guys, they're the ones with the big ideas, they're the ones on the money end. But there's always this tension between, people who are seeing the books and seeing the funds and seeing where, the cash flow, seeing how everything is going. And we, the creatives, we just believe that the whole world is supposed to be painted on the canvas. What
And they
everything
make your
sells
color.
with nicer colors. With the creative guys. So, Mr. Shoma, what do you think about this thing in terms of actual building a startup or building a business? How much funding do you think should go into the branding aspect and why?
Okay, so I would like to piggyback off what Mr. Babajide and our other panelists have said. I met you before the secondary school reunion. I don't know if you know Fuhad, when he went around the country. Fuhad Nawal. Yes. Yeah. So for branding, I would like to break it down. Is the brand and what is not the brand? I'm a fan of Martin Neumeyer and Seth Godin, like Martin and branding. And Martin Neumeyer, he said that he gave this definition that actually makes more sense. Saying that it's simpler to grasp, and he said branding is not your logo, and branding is not your product. Branding is not company or your entity. A brand is not an entity. So what a brand is the gut feeling that your customers, your users, or that products, the gut feeling that you have about that company or that entity. Give an example now, for Apple, when you see the Apple logo, what's common? You think of simplicity, you think of innovation, you think of radicality, you think of sophistication, you think high end. Same thing that happens when you see the Mercedes logo. You understand? So when you have a brand that is attached to a symbol, it gives you that perception because you have to play that role where every touch point, like a brand is continuous stuff. It's not something what Babajide said. He said it's a work in progress, and I actually I like that part because it is not something that you just create and you leave. It's something that you continuously do every single time. So if, for instance, the Mycolo guy now, he sees that you have a bad reputation in the market. You keep putting yourself out there. People will not relate with you in a positive way. People will not come to you and say that I want to get Mycolo. People will not come to you and so what a brand should do is consistently build that trust, and it should continuously deliver on that promise that you have already given yourself. So it is the branding itself is bringing creativity and strategy. So creativity, good strategies coming together to help you build that brand. So yeah, that's awesome. How I've seen branding. And I want to give an example how differentiation has worked. I worked in the FMCG space, and it meaning me. There was a time where we worked on carton design, and it was during Ramadan. And what we did was that we different design and sent it to the north. You understand? And that's really boosted sales because immediately the stock came, it sold out immediately. Wow. That was about 50,000 cartons at once. So that's an example of branding. People will say, oh, okay, we actually have the users or the customers at heart.
So, that's profound. That's so profound. Just that to be able to package it and you sold out in one day. I think that's intensely profound. I love the way Mr. Sampson had put it earlier, that the brand is how you tell your story. So your product is one thing, but then your brand is how you tell your story. So all well and good. We know how important this branding thing is. Right? I mean, I'm sure we all agree with all the entrepreneurs here from beautiful points that have been made. I'm sure that we can see that it's pretty important. But in my dealings with small businesses, as a small business myself, again, a major issue apart from startup, a major issue even on the go in operations as you build your business is always the funding thing. It's always there never seems to be enough money. It just always seems like you're trying to race against the bank getting dry. So we talk about cash flow in business. For some people it's cash drain. It's not even flowing. The thing is not flowing. It's draining. As it's entering, it's just it's just draining. But when you now look at now we know branding is key. Roughly how much of a company's budget, say like your monthly budget or your yearly budget or however you want to do it, do you recommend, or would you say, based on your experience, maybe what has worked for you, if you want to share something, that would be lovely. Would you say should be allocated to just branding? Mr. Rufai had said something earlier about how like 30%, but I don't know if the other panelists, from your own, based on your unique industries, how much of your budget should you allocate to branding, and then does it change over time? Is it that it is more at startup, or maybe by the time you build it up a bit, you can step it down a little bit, and so on and so forth? Mr. Ipai, would you want to speak into that space first?
Oh, okay, yes. So again, we are talking small business now. We're talking startups, but it's also good to understand the big ones and then also compare ourselves to them. A lot of the FMCG companies, the multinationals that you have out there, they tend to allocate what you call a percentage of their top line, which is really how much are they generating in terms of revenue. And they tend to use a percentage of that to allocate a total budget to marketing. Branding is a subset of marketing. So marketing as a whole budget, you would have branding as a subset of it. So they would look more at it from a marketing perspective and say maybe 10% of their total revenue will go into marketing. But again, these companies are very, very big. And therefore, there's something called economies of scale. I like to use that word a lot. And what it just means is that if, for example, a company is doing 30 billion naira in a year, and they are spending 10% of that, that is 3 billion naira that they are spending on marketing. With that, they can do billboards, they can do radio adverts, they can hire celebrities, and they can get brand ambassadors, they can put their faces up and all of that. But when you come down to a small business that is doing 3 million naira a year, or 100 million naira a year, or 10 million naira a year, or 5 million naira a year, if you are telling them to use 10% of their total revenue for marketing, you find out it's not going to have any significant impact. So what you find out is with most small businesses, the initial amount you'll be spending on marketing is going to be very high in comparison to what your revenue is. So most times, small businesses may spend between 30 to 40% of their total revenue in a year on marketing. And a very good example of that is Facebook. Most small businesses who are e-commerce based or online, or they are trying to reach out, they tend to use a lot of Facebook adverts. Naira to dollar has gone up. So obviously, you find out that at the end of the day, you might be spending as much as 30 to 40%. But there's also another element of marketing that people miss out on. And that is where you have maybe a distributor or a reseller model. In a way, it's also a form of marketing, but you're basically ceding part of your sales price to a third party to push your product for you. So as a small business, you generally will see that the rule of thumb may vary from between 25 to almost 40 or 50%, depending on the type of business that you're in. For services, it's less hectic, but for retail or product-based businesses, where you are dealing in competition, then you might have to keep advertising and to keep top of mind and get the sale going. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's very helpful. It makes so much sense. That just puts a lot of light on it. Mr. Sampson, what do you think? You have obviously, I know that you have worked with your startup and in the agri space. On practical day-to-day basis, what do you think should be like a reasonable budget line to allocate to branding or marketing?
Yeah, I think like Babajide said, I would want to reiterate the same thing. As a startup, it's important to always remember that in business, we say a business is a complete entity on its own. Now, let me use this example. Hopefully it makes sense. If we look at an adult and a child, the systems that makes up the body of the child and the systems that makes up the body of the adult are essentially the same. They both have circulatory system, excretory system, and all of that. They're exactly the same system. So as a small business, you might be small, but you should have systems in place from the beginning. So what are those things that the big businesses do? For example, they have the marketing department. You may not be so big to have people hired to do the marketing department, but as a small business, be conscious about, we need to market this. Number two, you need to deliberately define your brand and put a budget. How much you spend on that depends on, number one, what is the market like? What are your competitions like? Which market are you, who are you trying to sell to? What does it take to reach them? Take, for example, as a farmer, we sell tomatoes. These are probably tomatoes, vegetables. These are some of the cheapest things in the market. However, we want to sell at the best possible price. Now, the only way we can sell at the best possible price, I'll use an example. We sell our tomatoes in my 12 at 300 Naira per kilo. Now, somebody is thinking, but my 12 doesn't buy per kilo. They use the basket. But what we already, so we know our 25 kilo is equivalent to their big basket. Now, when ours is coming, you hear things like, this basket, tomatoes, how did they say that in Yoruba? Tomatoes, and they are willing to pay more just because they have branded us as the educated tomatoes people. Now, that same tomatoes, when we get into stores, we put it at 400 Naira just because there is a name behind it. Now, how much do you spend on your change, your image? Are you trying to push a particular product? Are you trying to enter new terrains? Are you trying to compete? Are you trying to be a nonsense or a nuisance factor to spend part time? But most importantly, as an entrepreneur, don't just spend because others are spending. Have a target, have a goal. And like I say, generally, and not just to be a hustler. The question people usually would ask is, how do I know I am a brand? I'm actually building a brand and not a hustler. The easiest way to know is, do customers come to negotiate your products? If customers negotiate a lot with you, it means they are willing to pay you based on their perception of you as a person, not your brand. So you are a hustler. But when they see you as a brand, they would not negotiate your price. So in spending money on your branding, look at, am I actually building a brand or am I just hustling? So that you are able to actually direct your focus to be a brand. I mean, I don't know how many of us have gone to ShopRite to price things, because everything there is under a brand. So you just come in and you pay whatever they say. But when you enter the open market, everybody there are more like hustlers. And when they tell you this is 50 Naira, you are like, can't I take 4 for 200 or 5 for 200? So yeah, so there is a need to put a budget, but how much you put on it is based on the context of what you are trying to achieve. What are you fighting against? What are you trying to push? Like the man from Kolo said, for them, they put about 30% because they want to be in everybody's face. So for you, what are you trying to achieve as a brand? It matters. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love that too.
Thank you.
Mr. Babajide is saying that roughly 30 to 50, but again, it still depends on where you are in your business. And Mr. Sam is saying, you know what, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. You know, one of the things I noted from the two was that you have to take your market and your competition into account. You have to know, are you how you know, how much are you willing to fight to get ahead? People in your space are doing exactly what you're doing. You're most likely not the only one in your neighborhood doing what you're doing, you know, and so you have to get ahead. And so how much eventually you would invest, whether you're your annual revenue is 20,000, or your annual revenue is 10 million. Again, it will depend on how much you're trying to get ahead. I know that Mr. Rufai had said earlier that it's a 30% that they put. Do you think this cuts across, or you think it's for you? Is it a standard for most businesses, or you feel it can be a bit flexible with it, especially within your industry?
I think for me, by the end of the year, I will increase my budget to as high as 50 to 55%,
Wow.
because we're actually joining the fintech race, and we have some people that are ahead of us already, like PiggyVest and the Carrywise. So for us to be informed, or for us to join them, you won't join them with 10% or 5%. Trust me, people need a lot of young players need to know they need to spend money on branding. Like, so far so good, because of we've given out, as at today, we've given out over 3,000 colos out in a period of 3 years. And my staff ask, why do we keep giving out this colo out? No, you need to give out. Sometimes a lot of people don't have money for branding. Someone like me, when I started, I didn't have money for branding, so I'll just give me colo outs to people. Oh yeah, take, save. When you break your story, come and tell me the story. And you know what? And that is one of the reasons that I really helped my colo, for an example. A lot of people have colo in their houses that they collected as free gifts, but you know one thing, it ended up helping them to save. Now, when it saved them, it was not colo that saved them, it was my colo. It's not the proper colo that saved them, it was my colo that saved them. So your name, I don't like to, branding is everything to me. I don't know. Like I don't compromise for that. I don't. Once you're about to start a new business, I'll just tell you, how much are we spending on branding? Let's spend money. If you don't spend money, see, some people will get the grace for a business to go on well for them, and they won't spend much on branding. But for people in Lagos that is not smiling, competitive Lagos that
Nigeria is not smiling.
Yes, we have to spend a lot of money on branding. How are you girls?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Quick trivia question, Mr. Oshoma. Okay, I may not directly ask the same question, but just a quick side question that we want to. So again, like I was saying earlier, I know that there's always this tension between creatives and business owners. In your opinion, so you've worked with Dufil, now you're working with Flutterwave, and you've been in the creative space with these large companies for a while. Do you think that, in your opinion, do you think that businesses allocate enough, or do you think that uh, it should be more? You deal with these things. You know what it is to get out creative ideas and to actually market these businesses properly. Do you think Nigerian businesses as a whole allocate enough to branding, or do you want to? What do you think should be ideal in that space?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, there's always this debate between what branding and marketing is. Like there's always whether branding is marketing, or whether marketing is branding, or whether advertising is marketing. There's this divide between, there's this argument between branding and marketing. And I am of the opinion that branding is different from marketing. And the reason is because I'll give you an example. Like for no matter how much a Samsung will spend on marketing, they won't be on the level of Apple. You get? So I like what Rufai said about Carrywise and PiggyVest. Luckily for me, I worked with Carrywise, and I can tell you that Carrywise barely spent on marketing. Like the budget wasn't, like, there wasn't really a lot of money spent on marketing. And what dependent on was the branding. And there was already a base to which people would look at the Carrywise accounts, or they look at the app itself, and they'll be like, oh, this design looks really good. The illustrations, they look really nice. They don't look like I see that from Nigeria. They feel secure when they look at it. One thing about branding and design is that they foster trust. So if you are neglecting branding, no matter how much you market, people look at your brand and be like, there's this gut feeling that you have, like, I don't really trust this company. Like, their design looks very wonky. and it's not easy to actually like navigate through their app or whatever. So there are things that you have to put on the ground that you make sure that, okay, even if you don't spend that much on your marketing, your like people word of mouth will be able to like send send messages across people. Because for like for instance now for Carrywise, for instance, there was something that happened last year, end of year, what do you call it, end of year. So what we did was that we sat down and thought, okay, how can we make our users feel like just like this thing. They do this end of year stuff that they do. So we got inspiration from there and said, okay, how can we think about making our users pay for our users feel? Because you see them sharing stuff on your behalf. You're not spending any money on marketing. What you're doing is that you're just creating a space where they can actually look at your stuff and they'll feel good. And there's word of mouth. You have already built a tribe. And that tribe now, they're already sending message across other people to actually like broadcast your work. So it's very complicated. You should spend money on marketing. You should spend money on marketing. You should budget, because I can the budget for a year, and there was always a quarterly review. You check, okay, how much are we getting from all our efforts, from the BTL, from the billboards, from where are we targeting that's actually making sense? You understand? So when you're that big, you can actually start looking at how big you can. But you should, at this point, look at how well can I make my, like I like what you said about my Kolo. Is it not Kolo that saved them? It's my Kolo that saved them. Understand? That's another perception that I didn't build in the. If it was a normal Kolo, I am spending money like that, nobody will send you a message. Like I like Kicks, for instance. My guy Fuad, he went around Nigeria 36 states, and he wore Kicks. He wore Kicks throughout his journey. I have big feet too, understand? And one of my problems is that if I get a shoe, it is always spoiling. There's nothing I want to do. It's spoiled. The only shoe that has lasted for me was Clarks and Timberland. Even Timberland said it's spoiled. Nike know the last. Understand? So like Kicks now, you look at, okay, it's a trusted brand that lasts. Like you can even point to a situation where someone used it to travel around the country and it did not spoil. You understand? So you already have that perception that, okay, since Kicks is working, why do you say, okay, guy, I beg, buy this shoe. It makes sense for you. You too, you wear it and you're like, oh, okay, you too, buy this shoe. You already a base for you that you're working with, and that is branding. Then the marketing part that comes after. Branding is more long term because it's something that you keep on building. It's as long as the lifespan of that company. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. That was very, very helpful. I think that was amazing. So again, there's a bit of a distinction between marketing and branding. Mr. Barjay said earlier that with most of these large companies, branding for them is a subset of marketing. With a smaller company, from what Mr. Shoma is saying, you know what, you can't compromise on branding. You may be able to step down your marketing a bit, but you can't compromise on branding. Maybe to clarify, I heard this definition once that I always like to use because it just cleared things up for me. Said like when the guy wants to ask a girl out. Marketing is when the guy goes to go and meet the girl and he's saying to the girl, you know what, I'm a great boyfriend, I'm a great husband, just trying to sell himself to her. You know what, I come and marry me. You know, the advertising is if the guy pays, you know, maybe his friend or pays somebody to go and meet the girl and say, you know, this guy, it makes sense, you know, and all of that. That's advertising. Meanwhile, branding is when the guy positions himself such that it's the girl that comes to meet him and says, I think you are a great boyfriend. You know, so it may not necessarily cost you so much, but it's something that you have to be very deliberate in doing. And I love what Mr. Rufai said about, you know, for them, branding at the start was just giving people the free boxes and then having them tell their stories, right, of how did they save them. I know that Mr. Ipaye with Kicks as well. There, sometimes you have ambassadors, you have people who, you know, just because of the look, the feel of, you know, Kicks is a really cool thing. You know, I've looked up to the brand for years because it was just this cool thing. It's this cool Nigerian thing that can stand, in my opinion, beside the Nikes and Adidases of the world. So again, it's just how there's a deliberate thing to what is my story, how do I look, how much you invest. Again, you can take up what they have said, 30-50%, perhaps 10. If your 10% may not be significant, but it should be a significant part of your business operation. The final thing I wanted to ask you, this is now more, maybe it will be good to hear from, at least a real life experience. Now we'll then take questions from the audience. I'm sure some people are, yes, you can start to send in your questions to the chat box. But the final question I just wanted to ask our panelists right about now, when you look over your journey or your story of working with a startup or building your own startup or working with a business or building your own business, what do you think? What's the biggest plus? What stands out? What's your biggest highlight, your biggest plus in that your investment in branding has given you over your competition? So when you look over your story, the biggest thing that branding has helped you to, just put you ahead over your competition, what would you say it is? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Rufai or Michael and just hear what you have to say.
Thank you. For my own part, I don't know. I'll still go back to the word branding because there are some things that people don't get right from the beginning. Once you miss your way from the beginning about branding, so let me just try and say some things. I don't think I've ever paid any influencers before. I don't think so. I'm not bragging about it, but when I meet, let's say the day I met Pamela or met with all those Bimbadi Moye, they saw the product and they liked it. As much as I am very respectful, there's sometimes you see this man that is into agriculture. The day he came to GE, I can never forget that day because so many of the classes, I don't listen to them. I don't listen to the classes because most of the things I know them. But the day he came, he changed my mind. Like I was feeling like a farmer. This man branded himself very, very well. We've had I think we had over like 10 speakers. They just come and when they talk, I'll just be like, okay, you said your book. People, he gave me his life experience as a person. And that time I was really motivated. To be honest, I didn't know he was even the one that was going to be on this panel with me. Because I've been looking for a way to, anytime I remember G, I remember there was a guy that came and I was just exceptional. For me, about branding, I think branding has done everything to me. And apart from that, maybe the grace, because how can somebody that started Kolo with 2005 is now worth like, let's say like 100 million in less than 2.5 years? It's funny. And remember, it's wood now. People like, it's not just wood, they are knocking together. But so far, so good. The influencers has helped us. The branding has, because when we had meetings with people and they'll be like, when are you guys joining the fintech race? I'm like, should we join the fintech race? They'll be like, yes, that's the next big thing to us. So I think if we didn't get our branding right, we won't be talking about fintech now. Maybe I'll be like, okay, I want to do another Kolo that will have story building. No. So I think for me, branding my Kolo is branding. Like, I won't lie to you. I don't have anything to say because there's no life experience I have to say. What will you do right? Sometimes you do things right and it goes wrong. Nokia did not do anything wrong. Did you think Nokia did anything wrong? They didn't do anything wrong. And their branding was still on point. But I just feel sometimes grace comes with branding, to be honest with you. There are so many brands that spend a lot of money and they don't still come up well. It happens to musicians now. Now. I used to tell me some musicians are not branding themselves very well, but they don't still get lucky. So I think for me,
the entire story of my Kolo is branding.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
Our office, if I show you my office, we spent over 10 million naira in 2 weeks in our office. Why would people that are selling Kolo, why would your office be this fine?
Branding.
Yes. If I show you when people come to the office, they'll be like, is this place a gallery? So let me show you an example of let me just show you our office. Sorry, if I might show that. So this is my Kolo office.
Wow.
So we've moved from selling Kolo to a co-working space, and people ask us, "Are you guys not just selling Kolo alone?" Yes, we sell polo alone, but we want you to be comfortable. We want you when you come to our office, we want you to feel alive. So we decided to make everywhere, and that is it. So I can just open a shop now. Why can't I do? I can just open a normal shop and the shop is fine. But branding is everything. Even to our gallery, we decide to make our gallery as beautiful as possible. Sorry guys.
Yes.
So that's our gallery over there. So by the time we join the fintech space too, like my guys have said, they are the big boys in the game. They carry wise the biggie best. But we too one day we will join them.
Yes, so fantastic.
So-
Thank you so much, sir.
Oh.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Wajide, what do you think? I mean, we hail you. I mean, you have set a really huge track record in that regard. What's the biggest plus over your competitors that branding has,
So-
your investment in branding? Yeah.
So I would say I don't have a choice but to also concur with Mr. Ayolua. In terms of course, you know, there's spiritual things to this too. So you also attribute some things to grace. But I think that what has really worked for us, and that I would continue to advocate to a lot of startups, is storytelling. That is something that we've missed in all we've talked about today in terms of marketing and branding. Storytelling can help you to extend your message. You remember in the olden days when the town crier will come out to the center of the town and be banging something, you know how they say rumors also travel pretty fast. Like, I mean, so in those days when there wasn't a medium of being able to advertise, right, you obviously had to try to find a way to spread the word. And when you think about it, one of the best ways to build a brand also is to tell a story. I think a lot of the brands that have done this very well are usually the drinks brands. So maybe some of them would tell you that, oh, if you take this drink was done in some chateau in France. It was brewed in 1865 using this, that.
Exactly.
So a lot of small businesses need to also be able to tell stories, not just in text, but visually. And so I think we have tried to leverage a lot of that with a lot of our interviews, a lot of our documentaries or docu-series. Even when the business was starting up, we told a story, how to learn how to make shoes, a size 48. So a lot of the storytelling also helps, especially for startups who don't have the kind of money that they need to use for marketing. If you can tell a good enough story and you can put it into a medium like a video or something, it can also go viral. And so there's a book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I think Oshoma mentioned Malcolm Gladwell whilst he was talking as well. And that's a book that I think a lot of entrepreneurs should read. It's a little element of luck. It's also an element of timing and also an element of creativity, all coming together and then giving you that whole interesting mix. So storytelling, I think, is our number one. We don't spend as much as what some other brands would have to spend for marketing, but still, we also still spend money. But the storytelling has helped to carry that message beyond what we do.
That was profound, very profound. Mr. Sam,
Yes, ma'am.
with your competitors, especially because you are even pioneering an entirely new, you are entering a very recent or new area of agriculture. It's new to everybody, but agric has been around for a while. What's the biggest plus that your own investment in branding has given you over your competitors? And, how did that happen?
Yeah, I think number one is being able, like Babajide said, storytelling, but much more than that is being in charge of our story, being in charge of what we want the world to know. Because in a world where we have so much info flying around, being a pioneer, it's easy for people to misrepresent what we do. It's easy for people to just, because you have so many blogs that we just want to pick news and run with it. And at the end, you are trying to say, that's not what we meant. What you said is not what we said and stuff like that. But having a brand has helped us ensure that we are represented the way we want to be represented. Our message gets to, so for example, our image in the presence of the government is different from an investor, is different from a donor in the US. So, and again, let me also add that I noticed that's not part of the question. As startups, it's important to look for somebody to help you deliberately manage your brand who is good in that area. It's your idea, but you may not be able to tell it correctly. One of the things I know I suffered at the beginning as a startup is the thing is burning hot in your head, like this thing makes perfect sense. And you want to say it passionately. Unfortunately, somehow you become boring. You lose the person in between. So there is a need to get branding organizations at your level. There are what's the word now? People that can help you build your brand, that can help you tell your story correctly at your level. So yeah, for me, I think that has been the biggest thing, being able to tell our story and being in charge of our story, the way we want it told, being able to control every facet to say, okay, this is what we want here per time, this is what we want here per time. Yep, and I think because of that, I would say, because when people hear something new, the first thing is they go online to search for it to see, okay, what is this about? It has ensured, like Michaelo said, we are now in the face of everybody. Like, oh, when you say soilless farming, our name comes up and it's like, oh, that's what it's about. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. Thank you so much. Mr. Bajide, you're saying you may go offline soon. Like, how many minutes do we have you here for?
Well, I probably have another 10 minutes to go,
Okay.
and then I would have to go offline.
Thank you so well. We're not very happy, but thank you very much.
No, it's an honor. It's a privilege to be sharing. This is what
Thank
we
you.
should all do all the time as entrepreneurs. Just keep finding creative ways of sharing our experiences with others.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Some questions are coming in. We'll give a few minutes for those questions to come in. Mr. Shoma, before we take the questions, what do you have anything you want to say in this regard with the businesses you've worked with? What's the one, maybe an experience that you have seen live and upfront of how branding has set a business ahead of competition, or just the biggest plus that you have seen in your experience that branding has had with a business, that you have had one upfront experience with. Mr. Shoma, are you still with us? Okay, I guess he had to leave. We're seeing some questions here already. Dotun, I think I'll hand over to you. Okay, Mr. Shoma is back. Before we go to the questions, I was asking if there was any experience that you had in your experience, that maybe in 1 or 2 minutes you can just help us to see how branding has been a plus. What's the biggest plus rather that you have seen in your experience that branding has given a business over their competition?
Okay, so I think I mentioned this before about the carton design.
Oh yes, that's true.
So like for instance, there was one before that. Like, so it became like a staple for us, because I don't know if you know that Minimi and Indomie, they're in the same company.
Yes.
They're owned by the same company. So the Christmas before then, what we did was that we tried to design the carton like a gift box, and we put like a message. Then we say, okay, like Minimi, we're trying to like wish you a happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. So write this message and gift it to someone. Understand? So at that point, that was like something that's like an innovation in the company, because normally nobody does that. Indomie or any other company. And what happened was that Indomie picked that up and decided doing it too. Like any business that any holiday that comes, they try to like create like a special carton and give to them. Then for Cowrie Rice, for instance, like I mentioned this one too, like the end of year roundup. So it gave like that day Cowrie Rice was trending for like 2 days, because a lot of people were coming out and they're like, oh, okay, because what you did was you made it personalized, and when you go through the reports, because once you're using Carrywise, you have the data, right? So once you're going to the reports, and it prints out like an image that tells you if you are a budding butterfly, or you're a fiery fox, or you're a macaw. Like you just use like very elegant creatures. They were no losers, but everybody was the winners, but winners on different scale. So what we did was that we made sure that these people were felt good about themselves. And at that particular point, sign-ups went up. Like a lot of people started signing up to Carrywise because they wanted to get their own report too. And that's an example. So like branding gives you a very good advantage. And I like what Babajide said about storytelling, because branding in a way is storytelling of its own. And there's like when you try to infuse stuff like heritage, and there are very few brands that do this thing where they sit down and they think about how they tell their story. And what really attracted me to working with Carrywise was that they're trying to tell a story. And even the same thing is happening with Flutterwave as well. Flutterwave is trying to tell a story. Understand? And they're trying to let people know that, okay, we are, Africa is a continent, and it is difficult for people to transfer money across the continent, even to transfer money into the continent. And we are trying to bridge that gap. Understand? We're trying to make sure that everybody is connected in a way that I can send you money at this particular time and it will get to you seamlessly without any problem. And when you foster bridges of commerce, when you foster that kind of thing, you are helping people to grow. Understand? And that is the essence of like Flutterwave. And if you look at the butterfly, for instance, for Flutterwave, you understand that a butterfly, it doesn't just become a butterfly at once. It starts from a caterpillar, or a pupa, sorry. It evolves. Understand? So there's this metamorphosis that is happening. And we are trying to make businesses become butterflies that flutter around. So you understand? So there's the story that is behind just the logo alone, that you understand that, oh, okay. And I don't know if you've had the butterfly effect as well, where something happens, like the butterfly flaps its wings, then 10 years later it affects something, and that's very massive, that turns into a tornado or something. So like there are things that you need to be intentional about, that you have to look at and say, okay, how is this? You don't just put something because of the aesthetics. You don't put it. You don't put those things there. You have to think. You have to think very well about what element is going here. If it is just for decoration, remove it. Keep it very simple. Understand? It has to be aesthetic. It has to be concise and precise, and it has to be something that if anybody comes in contact with, they will be able to feel what they're trying to tell them. So yeah, branding gives massive advantage, because in a market that everybody is trying to compete with price, compete with features, branding will set you apart. That is very certain. Understand? That's why you see, like for instance, you see, I like to use Apple for instance. You see Apple is competing against the rest. You can't really pick out Samsung. Like when the iPhone comes out, you'll be thinking of Google, you'll be thinking of Apple. You'll be thinking of Samsung, you'll be thinking of Huawei, you'll be thinking of Infinix. Those are the competition. Apple is on the category on its own. Understand? So the branding has set Apple apart. Understand? And if you can strive to get to that point, it doesn't matter how much your budget is. It doesn't matter how much you are spending on marketing. What you need to do is to focus on how well you can tell your story with branding.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's so amazing and profound. A huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much. Mr. Babajide has had to leave. He mentioned it earlier that we have to leave. But the admin here will post his email address. He has been very kind to give us his email address. So if you have questions that you want to ask him directly, you can just email him. So like I said, the admin will post it here shortly. He put it up earlier, but just in case the chat is a little long and you are not able to see that, we'll have it up here just in a moment. I know that some questions have come in, so I'm just going to hand over to Dotun she's going to read out some of the questions that have come in, and then, just let's interact. Okay, if you want to put on your video as a member of the audience now, you can. We're done with the panel session. Would also